when you go to a design workshop and you say, I'm going to be a UX designer. Yeah. Right. Because the workshop is like that. And it's insane fun.
Yeah.
It's an insane design. It's an insane amount of fun. It's so much fun. But when you get to work on an actual job, depending on the company, obviously, right? Some are more freer than others, depending on who leads it. Sometimes you're you're partly subjected to the mortgage in industrial complex, and so part of that means is that people are trying to keep their job. So the fear of putting yourself out there and trying something, painting outside of the lines or coloring outside of the the borders and trying something new, or speaking up and saying this is off, right? So
Hmm.
for example, like when I was at Xbox, I mentioned to my manager because we were looking through one of my designs and I was like, something is off about this like horizontal like scrolling like model. And he's yeah, it I know, but we have to work around it. So there's entire models, not like forget about a little UI element being off. The model itself is off.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
model itself, and you know what's really funny? I worked on this other project at Microsoft, and when I was getting onboarded, one of the designers was walking me through their design model. Okay, everything in this world works like this, and then it creates that, and then it creates that. And I said, yeah, that's broken. And she said, no, you just don't understand it. Let me walk you through it again. And I said, no, the model is broken. Like, like, do you see that? And like, no, you just don't get it. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. Weeks later, I'm eating lunch in like the break room, and the director of the entire like team is chatting with his friend in the hallway, and he says to his friend, "We pushed out with this broken design model, and we have two choices. We either have to go to the management leadership and say, listen, this is at its core broken. We need to go back to the drawing board and start over, or we make adjustments and we just have to go with it. And what most teams do is they just go with it. And I'm not blaming anybody. It's not anybody's fault, but as part of that, I have to keep my job. I can't rock the boat. So that's why so many companies come up with like design that's not really awesome because
Yeah.
they aren't digging deep enough. That's why the air what do you call it? Not the Airbnb, the Uber app, Uber and Lyft is like so amazing because it's a math app. People think it's a UI. It's not the UI. The UI is just a presentation layer between you and the customer. But they thought about what is valuable to the customer is knowing minute by minute where that car is and being able to estimate down to the minute. If I get in this car, I'll get to wherever I'm trying to go by X time. That's that's all math. That's not UX. It's math. It's math, right? And so what truly makes awesome experiences is like really listening to the user and saying, how does this presentation layer, this UI, support the business part? That's the part you have to get right is the business. What's the business we're in? What are we selling? Uber sells rides that are accurate and pricing that is accurate. That's what they actually sell. They sell, we can predict that you are probably going to get to X place by X time, right? And because the people who they were initially serving were people who had meetings. I have to get to work by a certain time. I have a meeting. It's not just, I'll be half an hour late. Oh, it's all right. Right. So it's not, like a cab ride where you may not get to your destination at a certain time, and it's important. So
Yeah.
Uber said, well, we're going to take your ride and doing the math to help you make sure that you get the right ride as importantly as you take your actual job.
Let's go back all the layers. So it's just like, okay, I am afraid to speak up, and I am afraid to basically put myself out there because I feel like I'm going to receive harsh judgment.
I'll
And a
get
lot of the
fired. I'm
times,
going to die.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of times it's just bad environments. It's toxic environments. But then you have other kind of, you have the committee bureaucracy route, and then you have another one where it seems like it with Uber or whatever, like they're just probably doing a lot of split testing and just letting that decide.
Yep.
I'm sure there's probably some bureaucracy and big personalities, but it seems like from the outside. But I mean, you said Expedia when you worked there, like it was a lot more objective.
Yeah, because you were doing UX in support of a conversion rate optimization like shop. So everything we're designing is an A/B test. And so you have a very, very set list of constraints, and constraints is always good in design. So you have a constraint, it has to tick all these boxes. It has to be accessible, it has to be responsive, it has to be, workable in like basic plain HTML elements, other things, it has to work, it has to be in brand, it has to be consistent with
But
what's
it's
already there.
removing a lot of ego and like
It removes all of
bureaucracy
it.
from
And what's really funny is that how their organization is put together, design is part of like is like on equal footing. So it was very common to see our design managers like telling off product managers and saying, "We've already done this. This is the same thing. So this idea, if you zoom out, is the same thing. We've already tested that, and that doesn't work. We aren't doing that. It's not good use of our time. Come back when you have something new, right?"
Yeah.
And a lot of organizations is top down. So whatever the product manager or the VP says, you have to do. Whereas at Expedia, it was like whatever makes us money, you have to do. and
Yeah.
and we don't care how beautiful we don't care what anybody says, what any manager says. Every quarter, the entire company gets treated to like free lunch, and they block off this conference room, and the literal like CEO and the VPs are sitting at the table, and the leader of every design team has to show up with literally a list of their A/B tests. Or every product manager, every product manager who runs their pod, right, who runs different pods for different verticals, they have to show, well, I'm doing the hotels.
Yeah, so it's all very just bottom line.
It's super bottom line, and basically,
What
you only get cussed out if you don't make money.